Welcome to the era of instant gratification, where your dinner gets delivered by an app, your groceries are picked up by a robot, and your car can practically drive itself. But here's the question. If the power went out tomorrow, could you make your own bread? Could you sew a button, jump a dead car battery? No? Well, you're not alone, and that, my friends, is the problem. As I'm sure you are well aware, we live in an age where convenience is king. You can order your groceries while half asleep. You can ask your smart speaker to dim the lights. You can ask your phone to start your car, pay your bills, remind you to drink water, and probably raise your kids if you let it. We've automated so much of daily life that not outsourcing things feels weirdly rebellious. But as we've leaned harder on tech and automation and outsourcing labor, we've lost something really vital, the ability to do things ourselves. Because as our tools get smarter, we're getting less capable. We've traded self-sufficiency for efficiency, and that's fine to an extent, until those systems that we rely on start to fail. When the power goes out, the Wi-Fi drops, or when our smart furnace goes on the fritz, we realize we don't know how anything works anymore. Knowledge has been replaced by service providers, skill has been outsourced to apps and corporations, and self-reliance has become obsolete. Be sure to take just 2 quick seconds to give us a like and subscribe. Oh, and one more exciting thing, we're in the process of building out a brand new membership portal on our website where you can sign up to get access to exclusive content among many other things like coupon codes from our favorite sustainable brands. So stay tuned on that by keeping an eye down in the video description where we're going to link to instructions once we have that up and running. Back to the topic at hand. Basic manual skills, which once were passed down through generations, are vanishing. In the UK, fewer than 1 in 5 young people say they can cook a meal from scratch. And over 25% of people under 30 admitted they couldn't boil an egg. Across the pond here in America, a study revealed that 36% of Americans regularly cook from scratch, which is down significantly from just a generation ago. And only 20% of them reported cooking every single day, which, for someone who literally cooks every single meal from scratch and only goes out to eat basically when I go on vacation, that is so wild for me to wrap my head around. In 2013, Nutrition Journal published a study that reported that in 1965, between 88 and 95% of meals were prepared at home, whereas in 2007, between 65 and 72% were. That's a 16% drop at best, a 30% drop at worst, but it's a lot worse now, and the numbers get even more dismal the younger we look. In a survey of 1,500 Gen Zers, 42% admitted that they couldn't even cook a basic stir fry, 27% couldn't even figure out how to make a simple soup, and 61% couldn't make an omelet. No wonder we are rapidly losing touch with where our food comes from and what is in it, which I talked about the consequences of that more at length in my recent video on the farm-to-table movement, so if that's interesting to you, if you like food sustainability, definitely go check that one out as well. Now, looking outside the kitchen, our car maintenance skills are also dismal, and frankly, I don't know as much about this as I would like. I can do basic things, but if my check engine light comes on, I'm still taking that baby to the mechanic, or at the very least, the Napa Auto Parts and have them diagnose it for me. But here's the thing is I know that I'm also still better than the 35% of fellow millennials who can't even change their windshield wiper blade. Or how about the fewer than half of adults who say they could confidently change a tire, even though flat tires are the most common roadside emergency. But I have AAA. Yeah, so did I when my brake lines blew on a remote highway 40 miles from town and AAA said they would show, and then they just didn't. So, you see my point? Systems fail, services fail, and the more we put ourselves at the mercy of other things to do these essential services for us, the more helpless we are when those things that we rely on suddenly become unreliable. Now, how about the percentage of adults who don't know how to sew? And it depends on the type of sewing that we're talking about here, but 45% say that they know how to sew on a button, but only 12% know how to tailor clothing, which includes really basic things even just like hemming legs. Meanwhile, the average American throws out 81 pounds of clothing a year, which I would bet a lot of which could be repaired to make perfectly wearable. We also don't even really know how to take care of our clothing. That same survey shows that less than half of people know how to remove stains from clothing, and barely over 50% know how to iron a shirt. I mean, I haven't owned an iron in the entirety of my adult life, so at this point, that's basically a hill I will die on, but at least I know how. Like, I have done it. And I think sewing is a really important one because I don't think a lot of people think about the fact that every single garment on this planet, even that $2 Temu top, is made by a human. As of right now, there is no way to automate the sewing process, unlike weaving or knitting. Yes, we have machines to make the stitches, but a human still has to feed the fabric through it the entire time and set the machine. So why is their time worth less than ours? Why is it okay to keep feeding the fast fashion behemoth that only pays these workers cents per day while we refuse to learn these skills ourselves? On the whole, we are quite literally losing the ability to take care of ourselves in favor of speed, comfort, and shiny convenience. And look, this isn't about shaming anyone. If you fall into any of those stats I've mentioned here today, I'm really not calling out you. I mean, there are plenty of things that I don't know how to do. There's plenty of things we all don't know how to do. It is not any of our individual faults that our systems are built to keep us dependent. That school didn't teach you how to patch your jeans, or your apartment won't let you plant tomatoes on your balcony. That is not your fault, but it is still something that we should be aware of and fight back in any way that we can. So, why is this happening? Well, aside from the obvious explosion in technological advancement over the last few decades, the internet, there are some interesting things to consider. First, our education system doesn't see these things as important. Every kid who took a biology class in middle school here in the US can tell you that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, yet most high school graduates today can't even write a check. Most schools don't even offer practical courses anymore like home economics. In fact, home ec classes have been slashed from school curriculums in the US since the 1990s, with less than 5% of high schools now offering them. Most people under 40 have never received formal instruction in basic household repair, budgeting, or cooking. And I mean, even back when I was in school, there was a home ec elective that I took in middle school, but nobody, even the teacher and the school itself, took it very seriously. Auto shop at our school was kind of the same thing. They offered it in my high school, but it was a really poorly kept secret that the teacher was super biased against girls and would not give them an A. So me, despite really wanting to know how to work on cars, never took it because like hell I was going to let that ruin my perfect 4.0 GPA. And I don't know if it's because a lot of these classes are seen as traditionalist and sexist, but I say, why? Shouldn't everyone know how to change their oil or sew on a button? The next reason that I think we should keep in mind is that parenting styles have vastly changed over the last 40 years. We millennials were largely raised by boomers and Gen X, who, unlike their parents, were largely both working. Most of us didn't have the luxury of having a stay-at-home mom or dad who was there with us all the time teaching us things. I mean, my mom didn't teach me how to cook or garden or sew because she had to go work to support me. She was a single mom for a lot of my life. So she didn't have the luxury of that option. And even today, she sees how self-sufficient I am and regularly asks me, "Where did you learn to do these things?" And I say, I taught myself because it was something that I felt like was important to know. And again, this is by no means a criticism of modern day parents or our parents. They and we are doing what we have to do to survive and pay the bills. Planned obsolescence is the next big reason. So instead of learning how to make, fix, or maintain things, we've been taught to know how to consume them. We press buttons, we swipe, we subscribe and replace. And when something breaks, we throw it out and get a new one or pay someone else to fix it, assuming that thing was meant to be fixed in the first place. Now, I talk a lot more about this in depth in another video that you can check out here, but basically a lot of things are now designed so that we have to either A, just buy a new one when it breaks, or B, seek out specialty services to fix it. Take cars. Modern cars are not nearly as workable by the everyday casual mechanic as they once were. So that now you basically have to go to the dealer and pay for overpriced parts and labor for a lot of things. And I think fear of the unknown plays into it too. We've become so distant from basic life skills, so the things that once made us independent and confident and capable now feel exotic and intimidating. And if that seems like a bit of an over-exaggerated term, consider that one survey found that a quarter of Gen Z and millennials couldn't change a light bulb, with 20% of them citing it was because they were anxious because going up on a ladder could be dangerous. And then there's me thinking about the time my partner put a ladder on top of our desk and had to still stand on his tiptoes on the very top to change out the light in our recessed lighting. Well, yes, It is a good thing that we are somewhat safety-minded. We also can't let fear and anxiety of such a simple, basic task completely cripple us. Because the more we refuse to engage in things that scare us or make us feel out of our comfort zone, the more we outsource our everyday skills to technology and services, the more disconnected we become from the real world, from the processes that feed, clothe, house, and sustain us. And that disconnection has a cost. Loss of culture being just one of them. Because remember, traditional skills aren't just practical, they're cultural treasures. They're things like ICAT dyeing methods, or family bread recipes, or knowledge about growing food seasonally. Things that have been cultivated and preserved for centuries. They carry our stories, our ancestry, our roots. Yet, handmade textile traditions are disappearing. Fast fashion has cut global textile workers' wages, and many traditional weaving techniques are dying out. That's why we're really big proponents here at Sustainable Jungle of shopping, when needed, from small artisanal scale businesses that make efforts to preserve those methods in their production lines. Because when we forget these skills, we're not just losing function, we're losing those historical and cultural connections. I mean, how many of us wish we had asked our grandparents to teach us how to can tomatoes, or knit a sweater, or make pierogi from scratch? I mean, I do. Again, I had to teach myself a lot of these things, but the skills that I value the most are those that were passed down to me from my grandpa, like how to catch a fish and start a fire with a flint and steel. Reviving those skills is more than nostalgia, it's reconnection. It's honoring the people who came before us and what they knew. There's also something deeply ethical about knowing how to take care of yourself and your community. It's not just about being prepared for a disaster. Although, let's be honest, that's a big perk, especially in this practically satirical world that we're living in right now. But it's also about not overburdening a system that's already stretched so thin. It's about reclaiming that responsibility for ourselves. Because when we don't know how to repair, cook, grow, or whatever, we're forced to rely on exploitative systems. From fast fashion sweatshops, to industrialized agriculture, to gig economy delivery workers barely making a living wage. And taking the time to learn these skills ourselves is the fastest way to intimately become aware of just how exploitative they are. You know those $5 crochet keychains that you think are super cute until you learn how to crochet and realize that someone spent hours and hours on that one item, and then you realize these people are probably only getting paid pennies for it because you only paid a few dollars for it. The fewer skills that we have, the more dependent we become on those systems that harm people and the planet, whereas traditional skills are inherently more sustainable. Repairing clothing means that you waste less of it. Growing your own food means that you can do it without harmful chemicals. You get the picture. Now, let's talk practical, because so many of these traditional skills are now seen as hobbies rather than fundamentals of human survival. Knowing how to patch your jeans? That's a niche hobby. Grow a tomato? That's for plant people. Bake bread? Must be quarantine nostalgia. But they're not. These things are not just quirky little hobbies to do. So, here's a short list of some core traditional skills that I genuinely believe everyone should know, or at least try and somewhat be familiar with the process in case you had to do it. Number 1, baking bread, because there is nothing more magical or grounding than turning flour, water, and time into something nourishing. In the US, home baking saw a brief revival during the pandemic when we were all stuck in our houses, but over 90% of bread consumed today is still store-bought. I started making my own bread about a year ago, and I have never looked back. I mean, I literally have not bought a single loaf from the store since, and it has been such a rewarding and empowering experience with very little effort and really not much of a learning curve. Like, trust me, handmade sourdough is not nearly as hard as some people make it sound. Maybe I'll even do a super simple sourdough tutorial on here one of these days. So keep an eye out for that possibly. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in something like that. Beyond bread, I think everyone should know how to cook. I am not saying you need to aim for the quality of a Michelin star chef. Gordon Ramsay is not going to come into your home kitchen and scream at you if the noodles are a little over al dente. I'm just talking about knowing how to make basic, well-rounded, nutritionally complete meals. Because guess what? A lot of frozen and pre-prepared food out there is not healthy in the slightest, no matter if it bears the whatever fancy fad diet approved logo on it. Making your own food is the best way to know exactly what's in it and to ensure that you're using ingredients that align with your own sourcing values. Number 3 is preserving food. If you watched my recent video on Farm to Table, you know that I am a big proponent of seasonal, sustainable eating, and that is largely made possible through food preservation techniques. Because Because no, you don't need to go without veggies all winter because they're not in season. You can preserve foods when they are in season to eat through seasons when they are not. Canning is especially an important skill to learn with the current decline in our food system, so I really encourage you to learn it. And if you want to know more about food preservation methods on the whole, I do have another whole video on that kind of walks you through all of the different methods out there. Number 4 is basic sewing. So again, the amount of textile waste in the world is absolutely sickening. So do what you can to prevent it by learning how to fix at least simple issues that lead so many people to just throw away something that is otherwise perfectly wearable. Sew on a button, patch or darn a hole, fix a busted seam, hem a pair of pants. Literally learn the most simple hand stitches like the back stitch and the buttonhole stitch, and you can fix so many things. No special teaching or sewing machine required. Number 5, basic home repairs and tool use. Learn how to use a drill, fix a cabinet door, patch a leaky faucet. At the very least, know the difference between a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver. The more you can fix, the less you rely on buying new or waiting weeks for a repair tech or local handyman to get around to your job. And you don't need to be a carpenter or a plumber to do these things. I knew little to nothing about woodworking back when my partner and I built out the inside of our very own camper van ourselves. You can teach yourself so much, especially with YouTube nowadays. There is a video on how to do everything. And if you need wood to practice on, stop by your local hardware store and see if they have old pallets that you can have. Our local Ace always has free pallets out back, and this is a cheap way to get practice on low quality wood that would otherwise probably get thrown away. Alternatively, lumber stores and even big ones like Home Depot often have tons of wood scraps that they'll just give you for free. You just have to ask. Number 6, basic car maintenance. Same thing for your car if you own one. Can you change a tire? Check your tire pressure. Know how to tell if your car is misaligned. Check your oil and fluid levels. Jump a battery. Honestly, with portable jumper boxes these days, this one is a no-brainer, especially if you live in a cold climate like me. And these are not just dad skills. They are self-sufficiency and safety skills, frankly. And again, you don't need to be a mechanic, you just need to know the basics for some of the most common, simple things that happen. And finally, number 7 is fire building and basic outdoor survival skills. So this is the one that I actually grew up most intimately familiar with. As I mentioned, my grandpa was really big into camping and wilderness survival. So every summer I would spend out in the woods with him, and I learned some of these things literally before I was out of diapers. And if you prefer your camping prefaced by a G and accompanied by a memory foam cot and a propane barbecue, knowing how to make a fire, bonus points if you can do it without fuel or lighters, can still help you in an event of an emergency, so it's still something worth knowing. As is knowing how to read a map and navigating without the help of Google or Wi-Fi, building a basic shelter and filtering water. These are all useful skills to have in the event of an emergency. And look, this is not about becoming a full-time homesteader overnight. Now, that's been my goal, and I've slowly been working on adding skills to my repertoire for the last 5 years, so trust me when I say that it is a slow process. But I have found that the more self-sufficient I've become, the more I crave to become self-sufficient in other areas. It's kind of like a game for my hyper self-competitive personality, seeing how many things I can learn to do just by myself. So, start small. Pick one thing. Learn how to bake a loaf of bread. Patch a hole in your jeans instead of buying new ones. Start a compost pile. Call your grandma and ask how she used to make pickles. Just start small and do something. And in the end, just remember that reviving traditional skills isn't about going backwards. It's about reclaiming power, slowing down, and building a life that is rooted and resilient. And in an age where everything is automated, outsourced, and hyper-optimized, doing things with your own 2 hands, that's what's radical. So go ahead, learn that skill, do the thing. I am currently learning how to brew my own wine from plums that I grew in our community garden. I've already bottled and tried 1 batch, and it was actually pretty good. So after I learn how to do this, who knows? What skill are you wanting to learn this year? What have you always wanted to learn, but keep just kind of putting it off? Now is the time, and drop it in the comments below, and think of that like a little promise to yourself to actually do it. Let's bring the lost arts back to life together. Once again, this is Amber from SJ, wishing you all a wonderful day.